Chapter 1. The blaring launch klaxons were deafening even through the hardened shell of my descent capsule. This was it, the culmination of years of training and preparation, all coming down to this singular moment. I was part of the vanguard, the first of my people to set foot on the lunar surface and pave the way for colonization. If everything went according to plan, Earth's moon would soon belong to the rock Psi. I'd been waiting for this day my whole life. While other hatchlings in the birthing pools were destined for roles as drones or workers, I emerged with the telltale high-protein markings of a soldier. The clerics saw my future right away. As soon as I left the nourishing waters of the pool, I was placed on the path that led me here, stuffed into a cold metal ball hurtling through the void of space toward humanity's satellite. My capsule trembled as pulses from the main ship's gravity repulsors pushed us moonward. I could feel my hearts thudding, all three of them. The sensors embedded beneath my chitinous skin monitored my vitals, ready to induce sedation if I showed any risk of psi shock. My mind stayed steady, though. I was ready. The voice of the mission leader, Commander Kurtis, crackled over the comm link into my auditory orifices. We have entered lunar orbit and are commencing descent maneuver. All units sound off. One by one, each capsule called in. We were Vanguard Group Sea-Rock, 30 elite soldiers tasked with being the first to spill blood on lunar soil. Our superiority over the humans was undisputed. Their weak, mushy forms and sluggish synapses were no match for our skeletal cybernetic augmentations and psi-enhanced reaction times. We had crushed their primitive land armies countless times back home on Earth. Yes, they had bravely held their moon for many cycles, but their luck had run out. This sacred stellar body would now serve the Psi as a staging ground to conquer the humans' home planet once and for all. My capsule jolted violently as the descent engines fired, racing toward our target landing zone. Through the viewport, I gazed down at the sprawling human base below, built into a crater on the near side. It bristled with railguns, missile batteries, and other defenses, but our tech would overcome them. Moments before impact, my capsule will deploy dazzlers, EMP bursts, and other countermeasures to neutralize local resistance. Their weapons will fall silent. We whooped and gnashed our mandibles in anticipation over the comms. I felt my hearts race with exhilaration. I could already taste human blood. The capsule's psi amps fed my eagerness, amplifying it into a killing frenzy. Only the mission commands embedded into my brain held me back from tearing free right now and sating my appetite for violence. There would be ample time for slaughter soon enough. Suddenly, proximity alarms blared a harsh discord. The capsule rocked violently, tilting my orientation. We were taking fire. Human anti-aircraft missiles were streaking up from the surface to meet us. They peppered the sky like steel rain. "Evasive maneuvers," Kurtis barked over comms. The descent trajectory spun into gyrations as his navigator scrambled to avoid the barrage. Capsules around me erupted into flame, shattered husks raining down toward the human nest below. They knew we were coming. "Breach their fire control systems!" Kurtis screeched. Our tech drones swept in, spewing metallic chaff and kinetic interceptors to provide cover. But more human missiles punched through, finding their marks. The capsule's stasis fluids sloshed sickeningly around me as I was slammed back and forth inside my padded chamber. The lights flickered red. Multiple system warnings blared at once. "Commander, the humans have upgraded their defenses," came the panicked report over comms. "New missile targeting protocols have negated our stealth and countermeasures. Their railguns are also hitting our descent vectors with pinpoint precision through the chaff. Recommend mission abort." "Negative, we press on." Kurtis answered. "Deploy all remaining counter-drones and boost descent velocity. Get our soldiers on the ground at all costs." The capsule struggled to comply, blasting forward. Out the viewport, the base rapidly swelled as we plunged straight toward its center. Several of the large railgun turrets pivoted in unison, adjusting elevation to target our descent cones. There was no time left to evade. I braced for impact, silently praying to the clutch elders for deliverance. We had not expected the humans to put up such a fight. The railguns spoke as one. Columns of hyper-velocity slugs leapt up to greet us. The capsules of my broodmates disintegrated. shredded instantly by the storm of metal. Alarms screamed as my own capsule spiraled out of control, bleeding speed and altitude. The lunar surface spun sickeningly before my viewport. It was coming up fast, too fast. This was not how it was meant to be. The mission was in tatters. We had failed. The base filled my entire view now. The pale gray surface rushed up to meet my crippled capsule. All control was lost. At the last moment, I saw a human in a bulbous orange pressure suit turn to stare up at me from beside one of the railguns. I could see horror and defiance in its tiny eyes. They would give their lives to keep us off their lunar soil. Perhaps we had underestimated humankind's resolve. The remnants of my capsule slammed into the rocky regolith at terminal velocity. The inertia gel could not absorb the entire massive force. I felt bones crack, cyber implants tear free, and a searing pain as alien atmosphere breached the cabin. Then as emergency stasis engulfed me, it all went mercifully dark. But before I lost consciousness, I managed to activate my recovery beacon. The humans would come for me, and perhaps this battle was not yet over. Chapter 2. Everything ached. Even within the numb void of stasis, I could feel tendrils of red-hot pain writhing across my shattered carapace. My cyber implants were mangled ruins, no longer regulating my vital processes or enhancing my combat reflexes. I was laid bare by the violence of our sudden arrival on the lunar surface. Perhaps it would have been better if the humans had just let me die. As my faculties gradually came back online, I realized I was suspended in some kind of viscous liquid. My two good eyes activated, besieged by alarming sensor warnings, but still functioning well enough to make out blurry shapes through the opaque fluid. I was in a human vessel, contained inside a cylindrical chamber, not unlike my own descent capsule. But this alien technology was optimized for comfort rather than combat. I tested my limbs gingerly. 2 of my legs were immobilized, likely shattered to pieces within their exoskeletons. But my major upper manipulator arms seemed functional. The joints creaked in protest as I flexed them against the buoyant liquid. Through the pains lancing up my spine, I embraced the comfort of having control over my body again. I was not paralyzed or crippled. There was still a chance I could complete my mission. Suddenly, the chamber began to drain, the warm, viscous fluid lowering steadily. Within moments, the bare surface slid icy and unwelcome beneath my feet. Gravity reasserted its grip, weighing down my battered exoskeleton. I wavered but stubbornly remained standing, glaring out through the rising fluid at the alien creatures observing me. 3 humans stood on the other side of the transparent barrier sealing my chamber. 2 wore the same puffy orange protective suits as the one I'd seen beneath me during my descent. The third was smaller, encased in a sleek gray uniform lined with intricate blue lights. I realized it was a human female, her mane of long head fur floating in the zero gravity. She tapped a smooth glass tablet, monitoring my vital signs with narrowed eyes. "It's awake," she said over her shoulder to one of the orange-suited males. The human turned and made an odd grimace, baring its tiny white teeth. "Not it," the man responded gruffly. "He almost made it to the surface alive. Guess he's earned the right to be called a he." The female frowned. "It murdered hundreds of our kind when the Roxai invaded Earth. I don't care what it calls itself." My translator implant picked up their primitive language easily, but I chose not to respond. Let them think I was still dazed and confused. It would give me an advantage later when I made my escape. For now, I needed to learn all I could about my new surroundings. The pair of humans drifted closer to inspect me through the transparent divider. I recognized militaristic insignias on the man's suit, some kind of senior officer. The other orange-suited male stood back near the chamber controls, gripping an ominous-looking rifle nervously. "Incredible," breathed the officer. "Our analysts suspected the Roxai were augmenting themselves, but we've never had a chance to study one up close before." He gestured to my tattered cybernetic implants. "We need to know the full capabilities of our enemy." The female nodded. "This specimen can give us invaluable data. I say we should proceed to vivisection immediately." Rage boiled within me at the casual way she suggested dissecting me alive. But I calmed myself, letting only a low, menacing gurgle emanate from my throat. Let them continue to misjudge me. When the time was right, I would show them the true power of a Roxai warrior. The officer studied me a moment longer before tapping controls on his wrists that tinted the glass between us opaque. I realized then that the chamber was built to swivel and move along tracks through various attached modules, aboard a ship perhaps, or some kind of orbital facility. As my chamber was transported to the vivisection lab, I pondered my next actions. My plasma weaponry was gone, but these humans didn't know about my venomous stinger barb, coiled safely away inside its pouch at the base of my skull. When the time was right, I would break free and slaughter them all. The chamber swiveled to a halt. Through the divider, I could see the gleaming surgical tools arranged carefully around an operating platform. A complement of medical drones hovered above, tended by more humans in medical garb rather than spacesuits. They were prepared to begin immediately. I tensed, waiting for the moment the divider would open so I could attack. But suddenly, noxious white gas began venting into my chamber instead. I tried to hold my breath, but the powerful sedatives overwhelmed my metabolism in seconds, despite my attempts to fight it. As my consciousness slipped away, I cursed myself for ending up prone and helpless once more in the hands of the enemy. But I silently vowed that when I awoke, there would be a reckoning. When I regained fuzzy awareness, the first sensation was cold. Bitter, piercing cold. I lay rigid, no longer suspended in protective fluid, but instead sprawled prone across an icy metal surface. Straining to lift my throbbing head, I realized I was atop the surgical platform in the vivisection lab. Dark, viscous blood pooled beneath me, dripping languidly in the low gravity from fresh incisions in my exoskeleton. They had already started dismantling me, piece by piece. Rage cleared my disorientation, granting strength enough to rise up on my functioning arms. I ignored the screech of damaged leg servos and torn musculature. Lashing my tail, I swept surgical tools and monitors, crashing aside in a maelstrom of debris. No humans were present. They must have fled when my metabolism burned through the sedatives prematurely. The glass divider to my containment chamber stood open. This was likely my only chance to escape captivity. I scuttled to the lab exit, smashing aside titanium doors with sheer fury. Alarms sounded and I saw flashing indicator lights marching along the facility corridor toward my position. The humans knew I was loose and they were coming. I reached the nearest intersection, barreling through just as a squad of armed troops arrived to block my path. Snapping my jaws, I tore the closest human in half, his body floating languidly apart in the low gravity. Their bullets ricocheted off my partially armored carapace. I was built for war. Their soft flesh was no match for me. Wounded but driven by adrenaline, I left the patrol in bloody ruins. More teams converged, trying to pin me down at range with chemical weapons and stunners. But confined corridor fighting gave me the advantage. I slashed and rampaged, leaving only floating human entrails in my wake. Still, my crippled legs slowed me down. I needed to find a route to the surface. Up ahead, flashing indicator lights marked a bank of elevator capsules to other levels. I surged toward them, smashing aside the doors just as one began to ascend. Leaping inside, I grasped the human already occupying the capsule and crunched down, splintering its fragile bones as it screamed. Extruding my stinger, I pitched its convulsing body out the open door just as it began to close. The elevator accelerated rapidly. I studied the diminutive console, quickly deciphering the primitive numeric markings. This particular lift unit traveled between the underground facility and the lunar surface. At least the humans had been kind enough to show me the way out. When the doors opened, billowing red dust greeted me. The lunar surface. I had made it. Lumbering from the capsule on 3 functioning legs, I surveyed the bleak landscape. In the distance, faded Earth hung over the horizon, the ultimate prize still waiting to be claimed by my people. But my priority was escape and evasion, getting word back to the fleet that the humans had upgraded their defenses. This would require subduing one of the bulbous orange crew capsules I had observed shuttling around the base. Keeping to the shadows of massive rock outcroppings, I approached the base perimeter. Patrol drones hummed overhead, but did not detect my stealthy advance. The human security was focused inward toward containing the breach, not outward. I made my way toward a row of docked crew transports. just a little farther, and I could complete my mission. Suddenly, searing pain erupted through my torso. A perfectly aimed sniper shot from the perimeter defenses tore into my midsection, almost cleaving me in two. I gasped, choking on my own blood and bile. Lurching behind cover, I assessed the damage and realized a second shot would finish me. Perhaps I had underestimated humankind once again. I was so close. But my broken body could carry me no farther. My hatred of humanity raged like a nova contained behind my eyes. They thought me a mindless beast to be prodded, dissected, and destroyed. But I was a proud, storied warrior of a civilization millennia beyond their own. I would never let them break my spirit, and I would find a way to make them pay. Activating my recovery beacon one last time, I sent a simple coded message. The humans had bested me for now, but others would come, and soon humankind would learn that it had awakened a sleeping giant capable of crumpling their civilization in the palm of its hand. We were not the mindless beasts they thought we were, and we would have our revenge. The darkness took me then, just as the perimeter alarms began blaring to signal my intrusion. My last fuzzy hope was that the message had been received. Perhaps I had completed my mission after all. It was up to the Raksai now to avenge me. Chapter 3. Cold. Silence. An abyssal void. Deeper than the space between the stars. I drifted in absolute darkness, no longer shackled by a physical form. Just a spark of consciousness remaining, like an ember guttering against an endless wind. How long had I been adrift in this empty purgatory? Time held no meaning here. My memories of a prior existence, the mission, the battle, the bloodshed seemed a distant dream. Perhaps I had only imagined such things in a past life. Now there was just oblivion. But gradually, I became aware of a rhythmic pulsing, faint but growing stronger. Like the beating of some great heart, it called me back from the brink of dissolution. The pulse was joined by other sensations, the flow of currents, the crackle of charged particles. Forces beyond my comprehension, gathering and shaping the raw firmament into purposeful forms. Out of the void, structures took shape around my disembodied consciousness. Vast machines, bristling with arcane weaponry and bedecked with eldritch glyphs. They dwarfed planets, glowing with inner power to tear holes in the very fabric of reality itself. And from the depths of this mechanized Hades came a singular voice. Child of the Raksai, you have been called to serve. I had no mouth, but my mind cried out in reply. Who are you? What is this place? We are the Orcs, the rumbling voice responded. Masters of the hive, your sacrifice has summoned us from the abyssal nest. Events are now in motion that cannot be undone. The hive, legends told of their existence, an ancient intelligence that guided our race from the shadows. We petty Raksai were but their hands, eyes, and teeth. To be in their presence now could only mean one thing. Does this mean I am dead? I asked wordlessly into the void. You are transformed, the voice intoned. Your broken body remains in the hands of the human vermin. But we have harvested your psychic essence, your spark, to fuel the engines of annihilation. As my spark flared brighter, pulled toward the heart of this mechanized underverse, glimpses of the hive's purpose became sickeningly clear. Their mammoth planet-sized machines were not vehicles or weapons. They were components, pieces of a singular ominous construct being assembled across the breadth of the galaxy itself. These masters of the Raksai were building an instrument of such cosmic devastation and horror that even my alien mind recoiled at its implications. Nothing would be left alive in its wake. No star system spared from its hunger. Entire civilizations ground to dust beneath its myriad limbs. This cannot be our destiny, I objected. The Raksai were entrusted to protect life and order, not extinguish it. The voice turned grim. Our eons of hibernation have allowed chaos and disorder to spread like a plague. But no longer. The cleansing fire comes, and none shall stand against our fury. As the fiery maw opened to embrace my essence, I resisted with all that remained of my fading will. But it was not enough. I was already woven too deeply into their hideous design. As my consciousness slipped into the roiling plasma furnace, my psychic shriek reverberated far across the galaxy. I prayed another might hear it and be warned. I awoke with a hoarse gasp, a death rattle in my oxygen-starved lungs. My vision was blurry, chassis bruised and battered. But I was back, locked again inside my broken Rockside body. The clinical white walls and a septic stench confirmed my location. Somehow I was still alive, still trapped in the lunar laboratory at the mercy of my human captors. "Specimen appears stable. Autonomic functions are nominal," said a detached synthetic voice nearby. Through the haze, I saw it was one of the lab's drone assistants, busily attending to my ruptured form. The hive vision had seemed so real, but perhaps it was simply an anesthesia-induced nightmare, a grim portent of the future should my mission fail. I struggled to rise, but restraints anchored me tightly. The human scientists had wasted no time beginning their dissections again. Yet even mutilated and crippled, a chance still remained to stop the coming apocalypse. I needed to escape captivity and warn my people of the horrors brewing in the endless night. A door slid open and one of the young human females in a lab coat entered to check my vitals. She flinched at my baleful glare. "It knows we're not trying to hurt it, just understand it, right?" She spoke nervously to the drone floating beside her. "Negative. The specimen likely harbors hostility regardless of our protocols." "Can't say I really blame him," she replied softly, risking a furtive glance at me. "Still, he may have intel that could save lives on both sides. We have to try." I did not expect mercy or compassion from a human, but perhaps this small, frightened female could prove useful. I slowed my breathing and relaxed my stance, clicking my mandibles together gently to signal I meant no harm. She hesitated, then slowly moved closer. The drone circled warily overhead but allowed her approach. "There now. Easy, big fella. I know you didn't ask for any of this." She placed a hand gingerly on my damaged carapace in an oddly tender gesture. I held perfectly still, allowing the contact. "Maybe we can help each other get to a better tomorrow." The human's eyes were full of warmth and hope. She truly believed peace was possible between our races. And looking at her then, I found a sliver of hope lodged within my own battle-hardened hearts. Perhaps there was a chance, however slim, to steer our species away from mutual destruction, toward understanding rather than fear, life rather than death. If I could somehow bridge this vast divide with just one human soul, build trust and lay a foundation for change, then perhaps the coming darkness could yet be held at bay. But first I had to escape. There was little time left, and the very future hung in the balance. If cooperation was truly possible between human and Roxai, this compassionate female would be the key. Everything was prepared. The lab assistant, Lily as I had learned her name, managed to disable my restraints and security systems when the other researchers had gone to sleep. She was risking everything, convinced I posed no danger. My ruse had worked perfectly, but an ambush now would grant me swift escape, so I hesitated, clenching my manipulator claws. Lily saw my tension and gently touched my arm. "It's okay," she said softly. "I know you won't hurt me. Let's just walk out of here together." Her faith pierced right through to my core, and I unflexed my killing claws. She was right. Proving her wrong would doom both our species. This was our last chance at peace. I lowered my stance and clicked my mandibles in assent. Lily smiled, eyes glistening with emotion. She led the way through the dim corridors toward the surface elevators. I lumbered behind, holding back my full speed so she could keep up. My hearts pounded as the elevator lifted us up level after level. Freedom was so close. When the doors opened, the regolith dust and stars welcomed us. Earth glowed huge over the horizon as I helped Lily cross the compound into the shadows. She picked out a small transit capsule and we climbed aboard. As the engines flared to life, alarms finally sounded across the base. But it was too late. Our stolen capsule streaked away into the starry blackness. We had made it. Lily let out a deep breath and hugged me impulsively. "I can't believe we did it." "Okay, first thing is getting you to a Roxai ship for medical care. Then we'll contact the authorities on both sides and try to sort this whole mess out." Her ceaseless compassion astounded me. In her eyes, all sapient life was worthy of dignity. As we flew toward rendezvous with a Roxai patrol, I used the capsule interface to send a message ahead. By the time we docked in the hangar, a team was waiting. Lily greeted them with open hands. Please, we mean no harm. I've freed your comrades so our races can begin to make amends. Her words were cut short as the squad leader slashed her throat with one swift claw strike. She grasped the wound in shock and her life drained away. Lily! Brother! Why? I howled in anguish, kneeling beside her. She was vermin. There will be no amends. He raised a particle beam to finish me as well. Please, Lily gasped, locking eyes with me. Her small hand found mine, slick with purple blood. This isn't the end. Those were her final words before the darkness took her. Sorrow crushed my heart. I had never imagined a human could show such courage and compassion. But Lily's sacrifice would not be in vain. I stood and ripped the beam weapon away, breaking my brother's neck. The other guards hesitated at my bared fangs. This mission is aborted, I snarled at them. I am commandeering this vessel in the name of peace. They lunged, but I was faster, honed razor sharp by loss and rage. The hangar was slick with neon blood when I finished. I activated the flight systems and turned the ship toward home, toward Earth. If I could not yet bring our races together, I would at least ensure Lily's planet was defended from the coming darkness. She had shown me that humans were worthy of survival. Perhaps in time, others would see that truth as well. The Rock's Eye vessel streaked toward the blue planet below. I bypassed the orbital defenses and made for a low pass over the shimmering seas and verdant lands. Amazing that a species so young had mastered their world so well, yet still so much potential lay before them. I only prayed they would continue to follow Lily's example, shouldering each test with wisdom and grace, with courage, compassion, and hope. My ship climbed back into the blackness, damaged but intact. The hive fleet still gathered on the fringes, preparing to feast. But the Rock's Eye had absorbed losses today. Humankind would stand and fight rather than submit, and I would stand with them. Lily's dream seemed very far away now, but the smallest seed of hope once planted can split stone and reshape destiny. She had awakened that hope in me. That was enough to keep fighting. I owed her that much. I set course for the rally point Lily told me about. Perhaps there I could find others who believed as she did that we were not so different after all. Our statesmen could negotiate, build trust, prove to the hive that humanity was strong and deserved a place among the stars. Prove that there was another way. The ship jumped, slipping faster than light toward the promised coordinates. I had no way to know what waited out there. But for the first time since planetfall, I felt hope kindle within my hearts. Hope that Lily's dream would find fertile soil among both our peoples, that we could diverge from the path of blood. The voyage ahead would be long, but we would make it together, all of us. I watched the glittering starfield shift into azure infinity from the cockpit. We were leaving the past behind, headed bravely into uncharted territory. Where we all ended up now rested in capable young hands like Lily's. The future was theirs to shape, and because of her, I truly believed they would choose wisely.